Check one, check two.
Well, hello, Phil. Welcome to Voice Essentials.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for having me. It's great to see you.
It is. And you. It's such a thrill to have you on the channel. As we're talking pre-record button, I've been following your work for a little while, and with great interest, and you know, shouting my yeses and yays from afar, because of course you're in the UK, I'm in Australia, and because a big thrust of your channel, Wings of Pegasus, is looking at pitch correction and authenticity of voice and those sorts of things. Can you, because there will be people, despite the fact that you've got a channel of nearly 500,000 subscribers, double the size of mine, well done. Despite the size of the channel, there will be people who don't know you.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, tell us a bit about who is Fil Henley from Wings of Pegasus.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I mean, I started playing guitar at the age of 11. And had my first kind of band when I was 19, and did the whole, you know, gigging and performing thing throughout my 20s. Then in my late 20s, early 30s, then did the Wings of Pegasus thing, which was my band. We played in and around London. And yeah, we finished third in a national Battle of the Bands competition. I think it's like 10,000 bands. So that's quite good for a hard rock band, because it wasn't necessarily the flavour of the industry at that time. But yeah, from then on, being a musician and selling my music online, because people knew that I played the guitar, and I'd also taught guitar for about 15 years at that time, but probably closer to 20 years now. Having the teaching and playing, people then asked me to look at different performances and what the guitarist was doing, how he was getting that sound and all that kind of stuff. So I started doing analysis videos, and from the first analysis video on YouTube, it got a lot of views. And I was just doing it for my patrons at the time, who were kind of fans that were supporting my music. And that just went from one request to another request to another request, and the views just kept on kind of snowballing. And I was really only pointing out what I knew from kind of producing my own music and my own album, and yeah, having played live and knowing from body language what has happened in that particular scenario to that artist. I could say, well, this is what's happened, because you can see that, you know, they're struggling with their in-ears, or they haven't got their fold back loud enough, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I was pointing out things about live performances. And yeah, more recently, over the last kind of 3 to 5 years, a lot of requests have come along from that vocal side of things. And because I've you know, sung live and learned to sing in kind of my late 20s, I could never sing before, and because I played guitar, I tried to figure it out from that kind of perspective of you know, singing and trying to pick up what I could from the internet. So I've kind of been through that journey of trying to get your vocal cords to work, which as a guitarist, you think, okay, this isn't the same as playing a string and you get the note. You could try and get the note, but it might not happen. So I think at that point, all of my guitar practice finished. And I thought, okay, this vocals thing is a lot more difficult, and it's a totally different challenge to learning to play an instrument. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on that. So yeah, I watched a lot of courses and could apply, you know, kind of going through that journey, I guess, to what I was seeing, and the production side of it. That all helped me to see what was going on with the performance. And of course, the first time that I said, this particular performance is pitch corrected, or it's auto-tuned, or it's lip synced, people didn't know, whereas I assumed that people would know. So they then asked me, well, what about this artist? Are they lip syncing, or are they using auto-tune? So then I'd point out that, yeah, they are singing live, but it is going through auto-tune. And with my kind of knowledge and production background, I then thought, well, it'll be quite good to display this on screen so they can see what I'm hearing. Because for me, hearing a voice that's calibrated to A440 standard pitch equal temperament just sticks out. It's too precise, and it does have a mechanical sound to it, because that's exactly what's happening. The voice is being put on a line where it wouldn't ordinarily go, especially consistently, time after time, note after note. So yeah, having presented it on screen and said, right, this performance is this, then I just started getting loads of requests saying, well, what about this artist? And it's understandable, because people might be a fan of a particular artist and they need to know, because they think, well, yeah, is what I'm watching, have what I've been listening to over the last however many years, or this particular performance that I watch all the time, is it actually what I think it is? So I guess that's where the kind of explosion of people wanting me to look into things has happened, just because of that, I guess, underlying suspicion that's now there, but just the fact that nobody really knows the extent to which it's going on.
The way I often describe it to my students when we're talking about this particular industry issue is I often relate it to back in the sort of the 80s and 90s, where, a lot of our, the glossy magazines with the cover girl, it took a while for people to realize that those images were being digitally enhanced. Yeah. And that what they were seeing on the cover wasn't actually real. And it got to the point where it was going beyond just taking out a mole or a freckle or a piece of or a pimple to actually body shaping and changing size of eyes and color of hair. And I think now the majority of people have a healthy level of skepticism when they see something visual. They know that it's being edited. We're not yet there, I think, with the audio world, are we? The fact that this issue that we're going to be talking about today is so prevalent. Like, it's to the point that actually it's the norm that this sort of editing work is being done. I wonder if we can lay down a bit of a glossary of terms as we continue, because there are a few terms that I think in the past have been kind of synonymous, but I think are now being more, focused. So, for example, when we talk about Autotune, what are we talking about?
So Autotune is something that's typically used live, but some artists do use it in the studio when they're recording. But it's taking the vocal or the signal, which is somebody's voice, and it is tuning it to a predetermined set of frequencies or notes. So when somebody's using Autotune, you don't actually get to hear their original voice. It's already gone through something by the time it gets to the speakers and it gets to your ears. So that particular tuning, I mean, the giveaway is the auto of Autotune. It's an automatic process. It's something that has been programmed to take a signal and put it somewhere that has been predetermined. So we've also got, outside of live performances, the post-pitch corrected performances, which is where somebody who is genuinely singing live, the audience will hear their live vocal. But then in the video that's seen by millions of people on YouTube, more often than not, the record label will step in with a producer who pitch corrects the vocal to make it more accurate. And this is, an app such as Melodyne. There are different ones, but Melodyne's very popular. And it's a manual process. So it's not auto-tune. This is now a manual process, which means they are looking at a screen and they're literally looking at the sound file, and they are dragging that to the notes. So when it's done really badly and really heavily, it sounds like Autotune, because rather than it being automatically snapped there, all that's happened is a human's done exactly the same thing, because they're looking at the same line. so they're dragging it over the top. But pitch correction kind of after the event with something like melodyne can be a lot more subtle, but still kind of
melodyne.
Melodyne
can go even further, can't it? And we're able to change formants to the point where we can even change the vowel, we can change length of phrase, we can change vibrato. There is a very fine level of detail that we can get into in post-edit production with software like melodyne. So I guess we've got two points there: the stuff that's happening live, and I guess that's probably the part that people are may be surprised to learn from our discussion today, and that is that that's actually quite a prevalent engagement of software in like big live performances. Is this that the software has gotten so good, not perfect by any stretch, but it's gotten good enough that it will fool most of the people most of the time.
Yeah, as with kind of all of the software, it's always going to come down to the person applying it. So that is always going to be the problem with pitch correction or a producer doing it and looking at lines. If they're not a singer themselves, they might not even be a musician. They might, just deal with production. If they are told that the most accurate note is this line, they drag it over the line because then they think, well, you can't get more accurate than that. So that is now correct. So they're not thinking about expression and, the sound of the voice, the natural kind of tendency for a singer to go slightly sharp, slightly flat, or even to hold a note and slightly, move sharp and flat. They're just dealing with finite values. So that's firstly, some of the problem why it can sound over applied is the person applying it. But there is so much that can be done with it that it could be really subtle, or it could be really overdone. As you say, even editing vibrato to make what was quite a wide vibrato now quite shallow. You can literally kind of squash it and do whatever you want with that particular audio file. But I do want to. I want to jump in here at this point, and I'm going to fully out myself as saying I am a person who has used and will continue to use pitch editing software in post at times where I'm looking for a high end of polish. And I'm doing that in my own studio because whenever I'm doing my recordings here in the studio for my little YouTube channel, I'm always doing it as a single take. I don't have the opportunity to go, I don't have the time to lay 64 tracks and then cut and paste and yada yada. So I don't want people to come away from our discussion today thinking that anyone is suggesting, and I don't think you do, Phil, although you can correct me if I'm wrong, to say that any of this is wrong per se. Like, it's not wrong to use these tools. However, there are implications, significant implications, and I want to kind of deep dive. Before we do deep dive into the implications, can you respond? I mean, do you agree or disagree with what I just said there, Phil? Yeah, so I mean, the way that I see it, I mean, as a musician myself and as an artist, when you're talking about artistry, anybody has got the right to do whatever they want to do with their own voice, with their music. Yep. If it's something that they want to do, then it's absolutely up to them. I think where the problem comes in is where, unlike what you've just said, where I do it, I want a high level of polish, so that's what I'm after. And that's an artistic choice, and everyone is entitled to do that. It's where people say nothing, and people say, "Oh wow, what an amazing vocal! That's really accurate," and they go, that's where people say, well, yeah, but how did you do that? And they don't say, oh, well,
Yes.
I've tuned it. So it's just, I think the transparency and honesty is the only issue. That there's a lot going around, especially on YouTube, where you'll see, and I've seen recently, videos that are obviously shot in a way to make it look like it's a genuine live unedited performance, and you can see in the comments underneath that's what everyone thinks it is. But
yes,
I know for a fact, because of analyzing it, it is not live, and that vocals are tuned. And when you get into that space, it's now kind of gone away from the artistic honesty and integrity, which is what being an artist is. It's just being honest with your fans. But it's kind of this other side of it that like I said, if you want to use it, great. But when it started to be not admitted, and sometimes even the other way, with people denying it, and then it literally takes somebody like me to show it on screen
to go
and
call it out.
Exactly. So I think
I will follow up to say that on my teaching videos, I purposefully do not use it. And this is where we can sort of access into some talking about the implications. The reason I don't use it in my teaching videos is because I don't want my students to think, and the people viewing my videos online, my educational videos, to believe that we are aiming for perfection in voice. And I say on my channel all the time that singing is not about perfect notes. Singing is about communication. And in learning the technique around singing, what I don't want my students to hear is this perfectly pitched, accurate when that's actually shouldn't even be the focus of the activity in play. What do you think the implications have been on, just your Joe average working singer from where we've found ourselves with this in the industry, the prevalence of auto-tune and pitch correction?
Yeah, I mean, a huge problem is now the prevalence of it all is literally an industry standard. So it means when people ask me, oh, has this been, pitch corrected? Has that been pitch corrected? I say to them, it's an industry standard. So it means that it is more likely corrected than not. But when we're talking about the human voice and singing and expression and emotion and all these different things that the human voice conveys, we're never going to be able to, I think, explain or appreciate the detail with how much is communicated through the human voice. And when somebody sings a particular phrase or a particular song, that holds communicative elements within it. And when you give that to a producer who's now going to move it, the relevance of what the singer was producing at the time is now not what they produced. It's now what the producer decides he wants it to be afterwards. So I think there's so much that you lose as soon as you start moving somebody else's voice, because you think, well, am I listening to the singer or am I listening to the producer who's moving it around? And I think, you can only lose things, that are part of that original performance. And with my analysis videos, I've looked at, some of the best voices of all time. And ironically, I've compared, say, a Whitney Houston performance to somebody doing a cover of the same Whitney Houston song. And the cover is pitch corrected. So it means it's over the lines of A440 all the time. And then we look at the actual studio vocal of Whitney Houston's, who, she's in a controlled environment. She's concentrating. They might be doing multiple takes. And you look at the lines on screen and she's not on the lines. And my question then, to my audience is, why, if that's the gold standard, why would you do something to your voice that she's never done to hers? Because that can only limit how close you can get to that.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah,
great voices are not naturally calibrated to, and especially when you're talking about vocal coaching, it's important for singers to know what is possible and what isn't possible. And I've had people that have commented on my channel and sent me emails saying that they have seen my videos and now they can appreciate that their voice is accurate enough. They thought that because they weren't hitting the lines that they were doing something wrong, because every song that they're analysing, they're looking at the pitch going, how are they doing this? How are they getting on the lines all the time? It's like, they're not. You know, a really important thing for the student to understand that if you're getting close to the lines, then that's great. You know, and that's all you really need to be aiming for.
I think that's the certainly from a singing teaching point of view, that's the first important step, if you will, in this process, is singers themselves starting to recognize, hey, I don't need to be a robot. I can actually have natural pitch that is not going to exactly nail the middle of the pitch center 100% of the time. The challenge then goes further than that, though, doesn't it? Because one of the reasons I think singers feel pressured, if you will, to align to the industry standard, given that we little people in our little home studios don't set the rules, is that the public have come to expect robot level perfection. And so it really takes a great sense of, you know, personal fortitude and principle to not tune, because the challenge is that the general audience is not going to be accepting of less than accurate, you know, pitch perfect singing. I don't expect that you've got all the answers to this, but what do you think we can do about that? Because
I think in the music industry we've got this really weird, it's almost like an alternate universe where everything's flipped on its head in everyday life, everyday situations. Especially now, we say, look, it's important to accept who you are, and people of all different shapes and sizes, we're all the same. And, you know, if you've got troubles, if something's on your mind, to talk about it, be open, be honest, and accept everyone for who they are, no matter what they look like. And everybody's imperfections makes them unique. It makes them who they are. So let's embrace that. As soon as you get to the music industry, it's like you hit a wall and they go, oh yeah, but not now. Don't embrace what you are now. Don't embrace your own unique voice. You're going to tune it. And of course, the problem is that there's a huge amount of peer pressure from the industry for independent artists who are recording their vocals at home, and they might have a great voice and they might be really accurate and they might not tune their vocals. And somebody might comment saying, oh, it's all right, but it's not as good as this artist or that artist, or even this independent artist who also does cover videos, whatever it might be. But that person's tuning their vocals. So the person that has actually done it and been totally honest and transparent and is not kind of pitch correcting anything, they've been almost not exposed, but they've had to take something on that might be emotionally for them hard to hear, that they're saying, oh, you're not as good as this person. And then they might watch that person's video and think, well, they're tuning their voice though, but I actually did it. So this is my voice. I'm naturally hitting these pitches. I'm not relying on a machine. And then this is the problem, that it's just gone, because the mainstream industry is doing it, and obviously for them, there's a huge financial incentive to make the best singer as good as the worst singer, so that everything's the same, so that you earn the same amount of money from every act you have on the label. But when you're talking about now about independent artists and people that might just be recording covers, it means all they're seeing, all they're hearing by these artists who are, you know, winning awards, winning Grammys, but they're being tuned. They think, well, how can I compete with that? Because if they sing naturally, everyone will say, well, you don't sound as accurate as the Grammy-winning artist, so they'll tune their voices. And what about the person who isn't tuning their voice? They think, well, that other channel have tuned their voices, so now I need to tune as well. So that you end up with everyone, no matter who they are, tuning their vocals, even if they don't have a lot of subscribers. So, this is it. It's like I said, it's a really weird double standard that we're trying to promote individuality and being accepting of everyone, but it stops as soon as you get to music. No, you're not allowed to be yourself. It's like, well, it's very strange.
Well, I would venture that it actually, on a sociological level, it even goes a step further, and it actually delineates and says, that person's a singer, you're not a singer, you're not allowed to express yourself with your voice, and this select group are. But yet, again, you pull back the curtain and you realize, actually, you know, that's, there's a whole heap of stuff going on there. And we've talked actually a lot about this post-production thing, and I think one of the challenges I have as a person who does reaction videos, and I resisted doing reaction videos for a long time, to the point where I even did a video on why I don't do reaction videos. And I resisted and in the end I found my own way of doing it trying to do it from a very educational standpoint, as opposed to just, aren't they wonderful? But here's the challenge, and this is one of the challenges that I knew I would face, and which is one of the reasons why I'd resisted it for so long, is that I knew going into it that so often I was going to be watching something that wasn't really real. You know, it might... And so, for example, I've just recently done a review video of a live take. You know, there's a channel that says it's called The Live Take, and it's this idea that the artists come on and do a single thing. Yes, they may well have. In fact, the whole idea is, and I have no reason to doubt that they did it as a single take, but that does not mean that it hasn't been edited to the hilt in post. And these are the challenges that, and whenever I bring it up with, you know, in my videos and say, I have my suspicions that this has been tuned. The vitriol that I will often receive from fans of said artist can be quite aggressive. So, you know, even when we're calling these things out, we're identifying it, for example, on your channel. And I do want to encourage my viewers, go over and have a look at Phil's channel, because it's wonderfully scientific. You can't argue with what you are putting on screen, Phil. But even when we are confronted with that, and when, you know, someone of knowledge puts that information up in front of them, I think there are those who still want to live in a world of denial, that I don't want to accept the truth of what you are telling me, that, you know, that you're the one that's actually driving a conspiracy. How do we, and I'm thinking of that point of in The Matrix. Have you watched The Matrix?
Yeah, many times.
I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if you hadn't. You know, in The Matrix, where the, you know, the antagonist says, you know, I just want to be put back into the Matrix. I don't want I want to taste the red meat and know that think that it's red meat, and drink this glass of wine and think that it's
ignorance.
I don't
is bliss.
want to be ignorance is bliss. How do you think we work through that aspect of things?
Well, I think I mean, on that side of it, just the point that you made before, I did a video on the first take, which is a YouTube channel. I don't know whether it's the same that you're talking about, but yeah, when they say it's all the first take, it's unedited, and that turned out, I didn't know at the time, but that turned out to be owned by Sony. But they don't really make it public. So that's why what I was showing wasn't live and was auto-tuned. And that's why there are such big name artists on this channel. And I did say in my video, I'm surprised that big record labels will allow their artists to go on a show or a YouTube channel where they could totally mess up and it gets released. So everyone has that now for the rest of time. But obviously it makes sense that it's owned by the label, and then they say, oh no, it is totally authentic. You think, well, yeah, but it isn't, is it? But obviously the financial incentive is there for a record label to do that. But getting back to the denial of something that, I mean, is objective and is factual, we're now getting into the realms of belief and fans of particular bands. And it doesn't really matter if, people who believe in anything. When you're now talking about a belief system, you can give all of the objective scientific data in the world to a person who believes the opposite, but they believe it. So you think, well, it's almost like a closed shop. You think, well, if it's a belief, you don't need any proof to believe in something because it's a belief. So that is something that happens with music. And what I find is that I'm very objective with my videos. And like I say, I've just been asked to do an analysis video. I do exactly the same methodology for each analysis, and the results are the results. And I will tell you what the results are at the end, and you'll be able to see them on screen. So it is what it is. But for people that don't want to accept that, it is very much always the case that the emotional response comes in, because that person now has been faced with an objective truth that contradicts what they want to believe. So there's an emotional reaction, and once you get emotions involved, it's no longer objective. You're now using a subjective feeling to take on that information and that data. And some people will go into denial and say, oh well, no, well, what you're doing must be wrong, because maybe they don't really understand what they're looking at, and they just kind of same thing, shut up shop and don't want to accept it, and will say, well, who are you and what have you ever done? And you get all of those classic responses. That's just a defense mechanism, because that, I guess, their opinion and their belief of an artist and what an artist stands for, if they now have to accept that the artist that they think is totally honest and transparent actually isn't, that's an emotional thing. That's something that they've got to deal with. And some people, I think, it's a step too far. They'd rather say, no, I'm not listening to any of it, put their fingers in their ears and, just call me names or whatever they want to do. But again, I just stand by the fact that my videos are objective, and it's not me trying to expose one particular artist. I'm looking at analysis videos or requests for analysis videos. So that's why we cover so many different artists. And I'll always present it on screen as for what it is, and people can cross-reference it, cross-check it if they want to, with the links in the description that I, always provide. So it's very difficult when you get to that point of people not accept. But you get it in everyday life with loads of different things where people deny objective facts. But that's the world we live in.
Can we? Can we acknowledge, though, just very quickly, because I'm thinking I don't want to miss the opportunity to acknowledge that there are circumstances where the artist themselves is not aware of whether tuning has been applied, either pre or post.
Absolutely. Yeah.
sometimes it's not the artist that's adding this, editing. And they are completely, in fact, some artists, there's history of showing some artists are left believing that there's no tuning, and it's actually secretly done by engineer teams in post, and the artist is left, declaring, I'm not tuned, and actually, they are.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge problem, because the artists, like when we're talking about these fans who might be listening to their favorite singer, and their favorite singer comes out publicly and says, I sing live. I absolutely sing live. I don't lip sync, and I don't use Autotune, and I don't use pitch correction. I do it live. It is what it is. And then when the live performance is released, it's then pitch corrected. Or auto-tuned. Sometimes it's really heavy, so it sounds like that. But let's just say it's really heavily pitch corrected. So then somebody asks me to analyze it, and I point out what has happened to the vocal. So now that person who obviously trusts their artist, and the artist is telling the truth. So now they're saying to me, no, you're wrong. He definitely sings live. But what I'm providing is objective. And this is why I always say in my analysis videos, it's not a witch hunt of an artist. I'm not saying that, that particular artist, on finishing their gig, they've quickly run to the mixing desk, put it on an external hard drive. They've gone to Logic Pro 10, whatever they might use, and now they're applying melodyne to their own vocal. I'm not saying that it's the artists that are doing it. I'm saying what we're hearing, and more often than not, especially with the huge artists, that is all post-production and a team that are doing it that the artist has nothing to do with. They're off on the next on the next show of the tour. They're not getting involved with editing their vocal from the night before. And I mean, that's it. That certainly Gary Newman, that I did a video on very, very recently, I had the crowd shot footage of him performing live. It's a live vocal, undoubtedly. And then we look at the official release on his channel, that not only is not the live vocal, and it's not his live vocal pitch corrected, it's been replaced so that the timing is off with his singing. So now, of course, and this is why it was requested for me to take a look at, because they're saying, a lot of people are saying that he's miming now live. So in my analysis video, I'm pointing out that no, he's not. He's absolutely singing live. We've got the proof from the crowd shot footage. But what's happened is that footage has now been taken. The audio's been removed. So they've kept all the band in there. They've taken away his mic and overdubbed on a vocal that I don't know where it's come from. And this is why it looks like lip syncing, because it doesn't match his movements. But if you're talking about now Gary as an artist, does he know? Did they say, oh, by the way, Gary, before we release this on the official channel, we've removed your live vocal and we've put on a random vocal that's not going to match, so it's going to look like you're lip syncing. As if Gary's going to say, oh, yeah, no, that's fine, do that. That's
fine, do that, yeah.
So, this is it. I always say on my channel, it's such
and can I add another scenario? And all of this, sadly, as we talked about this, a lot of this erodes trust, and to the point where I've come across in doing my analysis videos, I've come across a couple of videos over time, which I've chosen not to review because where it was handheld it was, very obviously handheld from the, but I was left going, no, and it sounded like they were in the room, but it was of the performance I was watching, but I was not convinced that it was the audio that was coming into the so-called handheld, if that makes sense. That there'd been some post-edit work done later, and then married up, synced up again, because it was just it was too darn perfect.
Mm.
And let's, I guess one has to, and this is where we get ourselves all, I guess, up in a tie with it, is there are moments, and we've all had them in our performance careers, where you nail it. Like you have one of the best nights of your year, right? Mm. But they're the exceptions to the rule. And it could be that those, couple of random things I found online were that moment. But even the quality of the audio was just too good to be through a handheld mobile device. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just, and this is where the challenge going forward, and we need to bring our discussion to a close, unfortunately, is we have to, I guess, what tools can we encourage other than watching your channel and dare I say my reaction videos also, where I do, raise question over certain things at certain times. What can people do as active listeners to be able to not be critical, but to critique, and to be able to filter what they are listening to? What do you think they can do?
Well, the problem is, because it's so prevalent, and some some performances are quite subtle, and it's almost like you need to get into the level of detail that I do to show it on screen. And I mean, people, if they really want to, they can just use exactly what if there's a particular performance and they think, I'm not sure whether that's real or not, they can use the pitch monitor app that I use, which is just called Vocal Pitch Monitor. You can get it on the Google Play Store, but also the Apple Store. And you can isolate vocals with Moises.ai, which is just the website, and you upload whatever performance you want to listen to, and it'll get the lead vocal, and it can even do kind of backing vocals and the instruments. But you can then hold, if you've got the app on your phone, hold your phone to a speaker, let the isolated vocal play through, and you'll be able to see how it corresponds to A440. A440 standard pitch equal temperament is what pitch correction and auto-tune is set to by default. Like on Melodyne, for example, if you double click, it will set it to A440. So that's just kind of what it does. So you could, again, you would have to go to that detail if you can't hear it. And I think very few people can hear it. And it's something that I'm learning, that when I'm listening, like yourself, when you're listening to a performance and you can hear that, this isn't what people think it is. It's too exact. It's kind of perfectly on A440. The other problem that you got with that is that Autotune now is getting very detailed with placing in a differential so that it won't always be perfectly A440. It can be programmed to be sharp and flat. So it's getting
natural.
It's getting very advanced, but it still is a processed voice. It will still sound a bit off because the original audio that it's working with, it has been changed, and whenever you change a file, you're applying a destructive process. It will sound a bit processed because it's not what it had to begin with. So but this is the other thing, that when you're talking about a performance that looked like it was on crowd shot footage, I've had that with a really well-known artist, and one of my videos that did go viral, but I won't mention the name, but it was a recording of her performing with her acoustic guitar and playing, and I did an analysis video on it and said that, well, her vocal has been pitch corrected, even though it looks like it's kind of off the cuff and just a natural performance. But after that, a few months after, somebody, and I didn't have any way to kind of quantify this, but somebody said, I was there on that, I was part of that crowd when she did this impromptu performance, and it sounded exactly like your video. It wasn't post-pitch corrected. It sounded like that live. So then for me, because I'm showing it's on A440, that means the live performance was undoubtedly auto-tuned if it was that sound that this person is claiming and saying that, oh, she doesn't, pitch correct her voice. That's what it sounded like live. So that's the thing. Auto-tune being used live can now be so subtle that people are hearing an auto-tune voice live, even in an impromptu performance, which it definitely wasn't. It was so pre-planned to like, oh guys, should we just do a song? And it's like I don't know if you've seen Anchorman, where he gets his flute out. It's I'm totally unprepared. It's like, well, why have you got that in your jacket then? It's like why have you got somebody handing you a guitar? If it's guys, should we just do a song? So anyway, totally pre-planned. But then that kind of stands to reason that, oh, well, that's why it's auto-tuned, because this is all a pre-planned impromptu thing that obviously the vocal's going to be perfect because it's being automatically tuned all the time.
Yeah, I think it's important in the modern age to, where appropriate, and because I don't want people to walk away from today's video going, all is lost, nothing's real, we can't trust anyone. But I think, as people, because my channel's all about learning to sing, I think it is important that we know when it's appropriate to bring a healthy dose of cynicism and questioning, a healthy dose of doubt to what we are watching, what we are viewing. And there's a certain level, as we said early in our discussion, a certain level of healthy self-protection, because we need to remind ourselves that what we are watching, undoctored, is also imperfect, just like us.
Yeah. And
if we were to put, if you had the opportunity to stand in the studio that, name your favorite artist has the opportunity to stand in with the team of engineers that they have, it is likely that you would come out sounding $1 million as well. And so it's just really important that we're able to always contextualize what we're watching, and that we don't immediately just reflect it against ourselves and then as a result see ourselves as less than, because what we are in that moment typically reflecting ourselves against and comparing ourselves with is not real. I think it's such a
the only way we get to that point of, when we were referring earlier to independent artists and singers who feel under pressure to do it because everyone else is doing it, the only way we get to that point of appreciating and understanding what is real and what isn't is just the honesty and the openness that is being brought to the rest of society that we are very much focusing on. It's like, well, if we're focusing on these things in society that we're now becoming more aware of that might cause mental health issues because of stress and people feeling not adequate and not feeling good enough, you think, well, how does that not apply to a singer? Some singers, when they're learning to sing, they're the most vulnerable people there are, because you're constantly judging yourself against other people. And some people don't even want to sing in public because they're scared of the judgment. So you think, well, if there's any place in society, if there's any population where we should say, don't worry, honesty, transparency, just sing, just do what you do and you're not going to be judged. I think if there's any population that need to hear that, it is singers, and especially young singers, because all they're hearing are perfect vocals. And unfortunately, they are going to compare themselves to that. And the last thing you want, the next generation of singers either kind of giving up or being affected mentally and emotionally because they're not good enough. I think if there's one thing that will help with that is just trying to be honest and transparent. And I will throw in here that I'm working on something at the moment that is going to launch in the future that is very much with this at its core of knowing what we're listening to, honesty, transparency, and yeah, appreciating people's natural voices. And more importantly, knowing what is a natural voice and what isn't. Not saying that one is right and one is wrong, but just the transparency of knowing which is which. So at least everyone's got that, you know, equal playing field, and we know exactly what's going on, because that will eliminate all of the stress and the judgment and the apprehension of releasing something, because people will know what you're doing. So yeah.
Yeah,
a long way to go though, I think.
Long way to go, and I'm going to be watching with interest to see where you're able to take that and to give us that extra tool, if you will.
Yeah. I'll definitely keep you in the loop.
Please do, and I look forward to perhaps having future discussions with you here on the channel about it, you know, as time unfolds. And it's a big topic. I don't want people to walk away feeling terribly discouraged. If anything, I'm hoping today's discussion has equipped you with knowledge and, as I said, with tools to go to be able to sift through, you know, and to correctly align in your mind what you are listening to at any given moment. And just because it says live, you know, on the title of the YouTube channel doesn't necessarily mean it is so. Phil, thank you. It was a thrill, Phil, to have you. Tell everyone what, I mean, because we're recording this at a very different. We're not recording this live, if you will, like I would normally. Because you're in the UK, our times didn't line up. What time is it right now in the UK?
So it's just come up to 1:45 in the morning.
You officially are the latest person as in your time that I've ever, or earliest. Which one do we say?
I guess this is it. Like, when I go to bed, kind of, in a few hours' time, I always say that I go to bed really late, but it's not really late. It's actually early.
It's actually early, which is crazy. So thank you for taking the time to join us and on the channel, and I very much look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, and I look forward to being back and talking about things in the future.